I stood in my own living room, watching my wife hold another man's baby, while my son, Theo, called a complete stranger daddy. Nobody knew that I had only gone out to take out the trash, got dragged onto a spaceship by aliens, and spent what felt like 16 minutes there. But when I came back, 6 years had passed on Earth. When Catherine saw me, she looked like she had seen a ghost. Then, she put her hands on her hips and tried to kick me out. "George, do you have any conscience left?" she shrieked. "You vanished for 6 years without a single word. Now that I've finally rebuilt my life and started a new family, you come back to ruin it. Theo doesn't even remember you. This house has nothing to do with you anymore. Get the hell out." I didn't say a word. I just raised my hand, showing her the glowing dark stone resting in my palm. It was an obsidian wishing stone, given to me by the aliens to make up for their time dilation error. It had the power to grant wishes. I looked at the lovey-dovey couple in front of me, and then at Theo, who was hiding timidly behind the man. Calmly, I made my wish in my heart. I want everything I lost back, with interest. 3 hours. That was all it took for me to figure out what had happened during the 16 minutes I was gone. The disgust on Catherine's face hadn't even faded yet when I asked the question burning in my chest. I was only gone for 16 minutes. How do you already have a new family? 16 minutes. Catherine grabbed my arm and dragged me over to the calendar on the wall. Open your eyes and look. It's 2032. You weren't gone for 16 minutes. You were gone for 6 freaking years. My head spun. Only then did I understand what the aliens meant when they said, everything will have changed. But Catherine didn't give me a second to process. She pointed at the man next to her. "This is my husband, Donald." Then she pointed to the baby girl in his arms. "And this is my 7-year-old daughter. During the 6 years you were gone, I married the love of my life and had a beautiful daughter. This is the life I always wanted." Her cold eyes made my heart ache. This woman had once sworn to love me forever. Yet now, she didn't have a single word of concern for me. She just wanted me to know she had married her true love the moment I disappeared. And the funniest part? The kid was already almost 7. The math didn't even add up. I took a deep breath to swallow the bitterness in my throat. "Since you have a new family now, then give me back my house." Catherine blinked, and then she let out a mocking laugh. "Your house? What house do you have?" Her snide look pissed me off. "Theo is my son. And this house was bought by my dad. How is this not my house?" Catherine pulled a death certificate out of the drawer and threw it in my face. "Look closely, George. You were declared dead 6 years ago. For the past 6 years, Donald has been the one taking care of our son. In Theo's heart, Donald is his only dad." "That's impossible," I snapped, cutting her off. "Theo was 8 when I left. I homeschooled him, tutored him, and took care of him every single day for 8 years. When he had pneumonia, I stayed up for 3 days straight in the hospital room holding his hand. I am his father. I don't have a father who abandons his family for another woman." Suddenly, a small figure rushed over and shoved me hard. I lost my balance and fell to the floor. It was Theo. He glared at me with pure hatred. "You ran away with some side chick and left us. You should have died out there. How dare you show your face here again?" Looking at the boy who looked 70% like me, my hands shook as I reached out to touch his arm. "Theo, I didn't abandon you. I was taken by aliens. It was a mistake." Theo slapped my hand away. "Aliens? Do you think I'm 3 years old?" He turned to Donald. "Donald told me everything. You're just a serial cheater. We still have the photos of you with those other women. Someone like you doesn't deserve to be my dad." "Photos? What photos?" I looked at Theo in sheer disbelief. Catherine smirked, pulling out a stack of photos and holding them in front of my face. "These are photos of you grinding on girls at a nightclub. Do you have no shame? And this one is even worse. Walking down a hotel hallway half naked with a stripper. If that's not cheating, what is?" Slap. I didn't hesitate. I slapped Catherine right across the face. "These photos are so poorly photoshopped. How could you use these fake pictures to poison Theo's mind against me?" Catherine clearly didn't expect me to hit her. She stared at me, completely stunned. Theo screamed and threw himself at me, kicking and punching. "You bad man. Don't you dare touch my mom." I knelt down, grabbed Theo by his shoulders, and said in a deep, serious voice, "Theo, I am telling you the truth. I was taken by aliens for 16 minutes, but 6 years passed here. I never left you." I checked my watch and quickly pulled out the obsidian wishing stone. "Look, the aliens gave me this. In 2 hours, everyone who harmed me will get their karma." Theo looked at the stone with disgust and kicked it out of my hand. Donald was right. "You're not just a cheating scumbag, you're a psycho." He turned to Donald. "Daddy, you're the best doctor in the city. Give him some medicine. Better yet, poison him so he leaves us alone." Hearing Theo's words made my entire body go numb. This was the child I had poured my heart and soul into raising for 8 years. And now he wanted me dead. I closed my eyes, forcing down the overwhelming pain. Theo, I loved you for 8 years. Do you really believe a man you've known for 6 years over your own father? Yes, Theo said without a second of hesitation. I believe him. And he is the only father I will ever have. My throat tightened. Theo didn't even want to look at me anymore. He grabbed Donald's hand. Daddy, I've cut ties with this man. He's not my dad anymore. Donald smiled triumphantly. Go upstairs first, buddy. I'll have a quick word with him and make sure he never bothers our family again. I watched Theo walk upstairs. Once the boy was out of sight, Donald stepped right up to me. Before I could even react, he slammed a syringe into my shoulder. A sharp, stinging pain instantly spread through my veins. Donald's smirk widened. Does it hurt, George? That's just a little taste of what happens when you try to take my woman and my son. He grabbed me by my hair and slammed my face onto the dining table. You lost a long time ago, George. Even before you went missing, Catherine was already pregnant with my baby. As for your precious Theo, the only reason he's still alive is because his grandfather left him a huge trust fund. Donald sneered. Since I couldn't kill the brat without losing the money, I had to play the good dad. I bought him every toy he wanted just to make him forget how good you were to him. I even told him bedtime stories every night. But in those stories, you were the villain who abandoned him. Right now, you're worse than trash to him. Rage boiled in my blood. I forced myself up, spun around, and landed a hard punch right on Donald's jaw. You son of a bitch. I'll make sure you rot in hell. Donald stumbled back a few steps. Instantly, Catherine rushed over. She kicked me hard in the shin. George, you bastard. I actually felt bad for you because of our 8 years together. I was going to ask Donald to let you stay here as a live-in housekeeper and my secret side piece. How dare you lay a hand on him? She pinned me against the floor. Apologize to Donald right now. If you behave, you can still live here, be close to me, and see Theo. Her words made me want to throw up. I spat on the floor. In your dreams. I'm not serving either of you. I'm throwing you both out of my house. Your house. Catherine's eyes turned malicious. She grabbed my collar and shoved me against the wall. Those photos might be fake, but I didn't just show them to Theo. I showed them to your dad, too. A cold smile crept onto her lips. Do you want to know how your dad reacted? Without waiting for me to answer, she continued. Your dad said he didn't have a son so shameless. He said Donald and I were saints for taking care of Theo. So, he left all his money and this house to us in his will. You're lying. My dad would never believe your garbage. I roared. Of course he wouldn't believe it easily, but I had a great accomplice. Catherine looked at Donald lovingly. After you went missing, your dad got paralyzed from a stroke. Donald got hired as his personal doctor. He spent 2 long years playing the perfect, caring doctor to win the old man's trust. She laughed. And I did my part too. At night, Donald and I were hooking up in your bed. During the day, I was the grieving, perfect daughter-in-law. We worked like a charm. Thanks to our hard work, your dad finally believed you were a cheating scumbag who ran away. He cried as he signed the company and this house over to me. I glared at her with pure hatred. Catherine, karma is going to get you. Catherine was one of the first students my father had sponsored through his charity foundation. Before my dad paid her tuition, Catherine had to work as a dishwasher at our family restaurant, eating leftovers from customers. Once, she fainted from malnutrition. My dad saw her, felt sorry for her, and started paying for her college. After graduation, she literally begged my dad for a job, saying she wanted to work for free to pay back his kindness. My dad thought she was a grateful, sweet girl. He mentored her and introduced her to me. How could she be such a monster? Donald grabbed my chin, forcing me to look him in the eye. George, only fools believe in karma. Catherine and I were tired of being poor. We started planning this 10 years ago, just to get rich. 10 years. I gasped. So, her working at the restaurant, begging for the job, marrying me, it was all a setup? Duh. Donald raised his chin proudly. Your dad was our golden goose. Working for free was just the hook. Marrying you was our ticket to the wealthy life. He shoved me back. Watching Catherine walk down the aisle to you in that white dress, I hated you so much. But to make it up to me, Catherine gave me your wedding ring. She even let me prescribe her some special meds when she was pregnant with Theo. So that's why she was constantly bleeding and almost died during labor? My eyes widened in horror. Donald laughed coldly. Too bad she was tough. She survived. Catherine looked a little guilty for a split second. I did care about you and your dad at first, George, but you guys were always so guarded. You wouldn't hand over the company to me early. I had no choice. I looked at my watch. Another hour had passed. I stared at them. Keep talking. Keep bragging about your secrets. I want to see how painful it is when your karma hits you 100 times harder. Now you know everything, George. But what can you do about it? We have the legally binding will. And Theo only loves me, Donald taunted. You were only special because of your daddy's money. In the end, you still lost to me. Before he could finish his sentence, his face suddenly went pale. He grabbed my wrist, checking my pulse. A second later, his brow furrowed. Your body. Donald examined me closely, and a dark, vicious look crossed his eyes. Catherine, his physical condition is exactly the same as it was 6 years ago. If 6 years really passed, his body shouldn't be like this. Catherine's face fell. She glared at me. What kind of game are you playing, George? She balled her fists and punched me hard in the chest. And here I was feeling guilty, trying to offer you a place to stay. You made up this ridiculous lie to trick us. I gritted my teeth through the pain. It's the truth. I was only gone for 16 minutes. 16 minutes. Catherine laughed hysterically. Do you think the whole world is stupid? She raised her hand to hit me again, but Donald stopped her. Wait, Catherine. Didn't George say he was abducted by aliens? Let's prove he's a liar and have him committed to a psych ward forever. Catherine grabbed my arm and dragged me up.
Fine.
You want to play the alien card? Let's get you tested. They threw me into the back of their car and drove straight to the hospital where Donald worked. They dumped me onto a bed in a private room. A second later, a nurse stuck a needle into my arm, pumping a cold fluid into my veins. Donald whispered in Catherine's ear, I already spoke to the lab director. He's going to write up a fake report saying George is severely schizophrenic. The asylum transport is already on the way. I clenched my fists. Catherine grabbed me by the collar and dragged me off the bed, holding her phone camera right in my face. All right, cheater. Tell the camera. Where did you run off to with your little mistress 6 years ago? Why are you back now pretending to be a victim? Her eyes were filled with venom. Do you know how worried I was when you first disappeared? I was so stressed that I ignored Donald for days. Donald's voice coldly cut her off. And because of that stress, she had a miscarriage. We lost our second baby. Catherine went quiet for a second, her gaze turning even colder. You owe me for the last 6 years, George. Today, you pay.
I ser det her.
Catherine, I am telling the truth. You can't do this to me. Are you scared now? Catherine mocked. I can't keep up with your own lie. Instead of waiting for the psych evaluation, I think I'll just make sure you shut up permanently. She grabbed a sedative syringe from Donald and stabbed it into my arm. I stumbled back, hitting the wall. The drug worked fast. My vision started to blur. Donald chuckled. Don't worry, George. It's my own special mix. It hurts like hell, but it gets the job done. As I slid down the wall, the obsidian wishing stone fell out of my pocket. I stared at it and whispered, make them feel 100 times the pain they caused me. Right then, a nurse ran into the room, panting. Dr. Carter, the lab results are back. His physical indicators are completely normal. The psychological evaluation is perfectly fine, too. What did you say? Catherine's hands shook as she grabbed the report from the nurse. Does this mean? George was telling the truth. Donald's eyes widened in horror. The aliens, the wishing stone, it's all real? Before he could finish, Catherine's phone rang loudly. She picked it up, and her assistant's panicked scream echoed through the room. Miss Catherine. Oh my God. The company is crashing. The assistant's voice was so loud, so raw with sheer panic, that it cut through the hum of the hospital's fluorescent lights like a rusted blade. What do you mean crashing? Catherine shrieked. Her fingers gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned a stark, bloodless white. The market doesn't just collapse in 5 minutes. What happened to the offshore accounts? What about the shell companies in Panama? They're gone, Miss Catherine. The assistant was weeping now, the sound of papers rustling frantically in the background. The bank in Zurich just called. They said our authorization codes have been flagged for high-level international money laundering and grand larceny. The federal investigators. Oh my God, they're already in the lobby. They're seizing the servers. The assets, the real estate deeds, the patent rights, everything your father-in-law signed over to us is being frozen by court order. Catherine's knees buckled. She staggered backward, her phone slipping from her hand and clattering onto the sterile linoleum floor. On the ground near my boots, the obsidian wishing stone did not shine. It did something far worse. It seemed to drink the light in the room, casting long, unnatural shadows that stretched toward Catherine and Donald like reaching claws. A faint, low hum, barely audible but vibrating deep in my teeth, echoed through the private room. My shoulder, where Donald had injected me with his special mix only moments ago, suddenly stopped burning. The cold, paralyzing sensation that had been creeping down my arm began to reverse. It didn't just fade, it flowed backward, rushing out of my system. I stood up, slowly. My limbs, which should have been limp and unresponsive from the heavy sedative, felt lighter than they had in years. The exhaustion of the last 6 years, the grief of losing my father, the agony of my son's betrayal, felt like a layer of dust being blown off my shoulders. "Donald," Catherine whispered, her voice trembling as she looked at her husband. "Donald, do something. Call your contacts. Call the board. This is a mistake. It has to be a mistake." But Donald couldn't answer. He had fallen to his knees. His hands were clawing desperately at his own throat. The smug, triumphant expression he had worn just seconds ago was completely gone, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. The veins in his neck were bulging, turning a sickly, bruised purple. My chest." Donald choked out, his voice a wet, raspy wheeze. "It's burning. Catherine, help me." "Donald." Catherine rushed to him, grabbing his shoulders. "What's wrong with you? Did you touch the syringe?" "No," I said, my voice incredibly calm. "I picked up the obsidian wishing stone from the floor and slipped it into my pocket. He didn't touch it. But I made a wish, Catherine. I wished for everyone who harmed me to get their karma. 100 times over." Donald's legs, suddenly, went completely rigid. He let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed down the hospital corridor. The very poison he had spent years administering to my father to keep him paralyzed, the same slow-acting neurotoxin he had just injected into my shoulder, was flooding his own bloodstream at a concentrated, lethal velocity. "Make it stop," Donald shrieked, rolling onto his side, his body twisting into a horrific, unnatural arch as his muscles seized. "George, please. The antidote in my office, top drawer." "There is no antidote for what you did to my father," I said, looking down at him. "You wanted him helpless so you could steal his life's work. Now you get to feel exactly what he felt. Every single second of it." Before Catherine could even scream, the heavy double doors of the private room were shoved open. It wasn't the asylum transport team Donald had called. Instead, a squad of police officers in tactical gear, accompanied by 2 men in dark suits carrying leather briefcases, marched into the room. Behind them was the hospital's chief of medicine, his face pale and sweating. "Dr. Donald Carter?" one of the men in suits asked, pulling out a federal badge. "I am Agent Vance, with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. We have a warrant for your arrest, as well as the arrest of Catherine Vance Carter for corporate fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit murder, and medical malpractice." "What?" Catherine gasped, backing away from Donald's twitching body. "No. You have the wrong people. My husband is a respected doctor. I am the CEO of Vance Enterprises." "Not anymore, you're not," the agent said coldly. He gestured to the officers. "Secure them." "Wait." Catherine pointed a shaking finger at me. "He's the one you want. He's a lunatic. He's been missing for 6 years. He's a fraud. He's mentally unstable." "Actually, Ms. Vance, we have been investigating your husband's medical records for the past 3 weeks," the chief of medicine interrupted, his voice shaking with anger. "An anonymous tip led us to a hidden partition in the hospital's secure server. We found 6 years of fabricated reports, falsified drug trials, and evidence that Dr. Carter was systematically poisoning his wealthiest private patients, including the late Julian Vance, to alter their wills." My heart stopped. The late Julian Vance. My father. I whispered, the cold reality hitting me. He's gone." The agent looked at me, his expression softening slightly. "Mr. George Vance? We are deeply sorry for your loss. Your father passed away 3 months ago, but before he died, he managed to record a video statement. He knew something was wrong. He couldn't speak, but he used an eye-tracking device to type out a message and hide it in a secure digital vault. He knew Donald was poisoning him, and he knew Catherine was complicit." The agent pulled a tablet from his briefcase, tapped the screen, and turned it toward me. On the screen was my father. He looked frail, his hair stark white, his face hollowed out by the paralysis. But his eyes, the same sharp, intelligent eyes I remembered, were filled with a quiet, fierce determination. The robotic voice of the text-to-speech software began to play. "George, if you ever hear this, I never believed them. I knew my son. I knew you would never abandon Theo. I knew you would never cheat. They showed me photos, but I knew they were fake. I pretended to believe them to keep them from hurting Theo. I signed the papers because they threatened to cut off Theo's trust fund if I didn't. But I hid the true ownership of the parent company in a trust that can only be unlocked by your biometric signature. If you are dead, it goes to charity. If you are alive, take it back, my boy. Take it all back. I love you." Tears blurred my vision. The heavy, suffocating weight of my father's supposed hatred vanished, replaced by a bittersweet ache. He had known. He had protected my son the only way he knew how, even while being slowly poisoned by the monsters he had tried to help. "No. No. That's impossible," Catherine screamed, lunging toward the tablet. "That old man was brain dead. He couldn't have made that." Donald, tell them. But Donald couldn't tell anyone anything. He lay on the floor, his jaw locked, his eyes wide with a silent, agonizing terror as his own nervous system turned against him. The officers hauled him onto a gurney, his limbs stiff as iron, while another pair of officers snapped handcuffs onto Catherine's wrists. "Get off me," Catherine spat, struggling against the cuffs. She looked at me, her face contorted with a mixture of rage and desperation. "George, you can't let them do this. Think of Theo. If we go to prison, what happens to Theo? He needs his mother. Theo has a mother who used him as a pawn, and a stepfather who wanted to kill him for a trust fund," I said, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "He's better off without both of you. He hates you." Catherine sneered, her mask completely slipping. "Even if you get the money, he will never call you father. I made sure of that. He will look at you and see a monster for the rest of his life." "We'll see about that," I said. The transition of power was swift, guided by an invisible, relentless force that could only be described as the interest of my wish. Within 48 hours, the legal landscape had completely shifted. The biometric lock my father had placed on the parent company, Vance Holdings, recognized my thumbprint and retinal scan instantly. The artificial intelligence system my father had programmed automatically invalidated every single contract, transfer, and deed Catherine had signed over the last 6 years. I was no longer a dead man. I was the sole owner of a multi-billion-dollar empire. The house, my father's house, the one Catherine had tried to kick me out of, was returned to me by court order. The locks were changed, and Catherine's belongings were packed into cardboard boxes and left on the curb. But there was still one piece of the puzzle left. Theo. I sat in the grand study of my father's house, staring at the empty leather chair where he used to sit. The obsidian wishing stone sat on the mahogany desk in front of me, its dark surface completely still now, having completed its initial task. The doorbell rang. I stood up and walked down the long, winding hallway to the front door. When I opened it, I found a social worker standing there. Beside her was Theo. He looked smaller than he had 2 days ago. The anger and bravado he had shown when he shoved me to the floor were gone, replaced by a hollow, terrified look. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He stared stubbornly at his sneakers. "Mr. Vance," the social worker said gently, "we've processed the custody paperwork. Given the severe nature of the charges against Catherine and Donald Carter, as well as the evidence of psychological abuse and manipulation of the minor, the court has granted you full, immediate custody." "Thank you, Ms. Avery," I said. "I'll take it from here." She gave Theo a sympathetic pat on the shoulder and walked back to her car, leaving the two of us standing in the doorway. The silence between us was deafening. "Are you going to send me away?" Theo asked suddenly. His voice was cracked, barely a whisper. He still wouldn't look up. "To an orphanage? Or a boarding school?" I looked at him. At the boy I had stayed up with for 3 days straight when he was sick, the boy I had taught to read, the boy who had looked at me with pure hatred and wished I was dead. "Why would I do that, Theo?" I asked quietly. "Because I hated you," he said, and a tear finally escaped his eye, tracking through the dirt on his cheek. "Because I believed them. I called Donald Daddy. I told him to poison you. I saw the news. I saw what they did to grandfather. I saw what Donald did to you." He finally looked up, his eyes red and brimming with a desperate, childlike fear. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Dad. Please don't hate me." My heart broke, but it didn't heal. Not entirely. The wishing stone had promised me everything I lost with interest. But some things, once broken, can never be put back together exactly the same way. The 6 years of brainwashing, the fake photos, the stories of abandonment, they had left a scar on Theo that couldn't be wiped away with a simple apology. He didn't love me yet. He was just terrified of being abandoned by the only father he had left. I knelt down in front of him, placing my hands gently on his shoulders, just as I had done 2 days ago. This time, he didn't flinch. He didn't slap my hands away. "I don't hate you, Theo," I said, my voice steady. "But we have a long road ahead of us. You've been told a lot of lies, and it's going to take a long time to unlearn them. I'm not going to force you to love me, but I am going to be here, every single day, just like I was before." He sniffled, nodding slowly. Can we go inside?" "Yes," I said. "We can go inside." 3 months passed. The trial of Catherine and Donald Carter was the scandal of the decade 3. The media, which had initially painted me as a resurrected madman, quickly shifted its narrative when the mountain of evidence against the couple was leaked to the press. Donald's physical condition never improved. The medical examiners were baffled. His nervous system had completely degenerated, leaving him permanently paralyzed from the neck down, unable to speak, his eyes wide, and tracking the room in a state of perpetual, silent agony. He was deemed unfit to stand trial due to his physical condition, but he was transferred to a high-security medical prison facility where he would spend the rest of his life locked in his own silent hell. Catherine's fate was different. Without Donald's medical expertise and my father's money, she was nothing. Her lawyers abandoned her when her accounts were frozen. During the trial, she attempted to plead insanity, claiming that aliens had stolen her husband and ruined her life. But without the wishing stone, which remained safely locked in my private safe, she looked like a desperate, raving lunatic. She was sentenced to 35 years without the possibility of parole for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and child abuse. The day after the sentencing, I received a request to visit her in the state penitentiary. Initially, I wanted to refuse. But something inside me, perhaps the lingering need for closure, or perhaps the influence of the stone, told me to go. I sat behind the thick plexiglass partition in the visiting room. When Catherine was led in by the guards, I almost didn't recognize her. Her expensive hair extensions were gone, replaced by a dry, poorly cut bob. Her skin was sallow, devoid of the high-end cosmetics she used to hide her age. She looked every bit of the exhausted, bitter woman she had tried so hard to escape being. She sat down and picked up the telephone receiver. I did the same. "You look terrible, Catherine," I said. She let out a dry, hacking laugh. "Is that what you came here to say? To gloat?"
No.
"I came to ask you a question. Why did you do it? My father gave you everything. He paid for your college. He gave you a career. He welcomed you into our family. I loved you. Why wasn't that enough?" Catherine's eyes flared with a sudden, vicious fire. She slammed her hand against the glass. "Because it was charity, George," she hissed, her voice trembling with a decade's worth of resentment. "Every time your father looked at me, he saw the dirty little girl eating leftovers in his restaurant. Every time you bought me a nice dress or took me to a fancy dinner, you were reminding me of where I came from. You thought you were being generous, but you were just looking down on me."
I stared at her, genuinely shocked.
"We loved you, Catherine. We never looked down on you." "Easy for you to say," she spat. "You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You never had to starve. You never had to beg." Donald understood. He knew what it was like to be at the bottom, looking up at people like you. "We were going to take everything. We deserved it. And look where it got you," I said softly. "Donald is a prisoner in his own body, and you're going to rot in this cell." Catherine leaned closer to the glass, a mad, desperate grin spreading across her lips. "It doesn't matter, George. You think you won? You think you got everything back with interest?" She laughed, a shrill, mocking sound. "You lost 6 years. You'll never get those back. And Theo? He looks at you and sees a stranger. He will always remember Donald as the father who loved him and you as the man who put his mother in prison. You're alone, George. You will always be alone." I looked at her for a long moment, feeling nothing but a profound, empty pity. "You're wrong, Catherine," I said. I hung up the receiver. I didn't wait for her to scream or slam the glass again. I stood up and walked out of the prison, leaving her behind in the gray, windowless dark. When I returned home, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the gardens my father had planted. As I walked up the driveway, I saw a small figure sitting on the porch steps. It was Theo. He was holding a worn, leather-bound notebook, one of my father's old sketchbooks. I walked up the steps and sat down next to him, keeping a respectful distance. "What are you drawing?" I asked gently. Theo didn't close the book. He turned it toward me. On the page was a crude but detailed drawing of a large, metallic disc hovering over a forest, with a tiny figure being lifted up in a beam of light. "Is this what it looked like?" Theo asked, his voice quiet. I looked at the drawing, and then at him.
Yes.
It was bigger than that, and the light was more of a deep, pulsing blue. But you got the shape right. Theo was silent for a moment, tracing the lines of the drawing with his thumb. "I asked the social worker about the photos," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "She said they were fake. She said Donald hired a professional to make them, so I would hate you."
He did, I said.
"And she told me about the medicine Donald gave to grandfather. And what he tried to do to you." He looked up at me, his eyes shiny with unshed tears. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you about the 16 minutes. It sounded so impossible." "It was impossible," I said, reaching out to gently ruffle his hair. He didn't pull away this time. Even I didn't believe it at first. But we're here now. That's what matters. Theo looked down at the drawing again, and then, slowly, he slid closer to me on the wooden step until his shoulder was resting against mine.
"Dad."
"Yeah, buddy. Can you tell me about the aliens again? The real story, not the one Donald told me." I smiled, a genuine, warm feeling spreading through my chest for the first time in 6 years. The wishing stone had promised me everything I lost, with interest. It hadn't given me a perfect, instantaneous recovery. It had given me something much better. A clean slate, the truth, and the time to rebuild what actually mattered. "Sure, Theo," I said, wrapping my arm around his shoulders. "It all started when I went out to take out the trash.